What's that sound? It's for amusement only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast.
Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. It's been another 2 weeks. That means it's time for another multi-bingo update. I need some kind of bumper music to lead us into this, don't I? Well, I've been diligently working on wiring up additional playfields. I've got the Shoot-A-Line playfield, which is the 28-hole bingo playfield. I also have a Gaiety playfield, which is one of the two Magic Pockets playfields. And I've done some work on the Magic Pockets unit that I have and got that attached. Reconfigured the playfield so that it works like a Magic Pockets playfield again. Somebody had converted it to be a standard Magic Screen playfield at some point. And I've also partially, I'm about a third of the way through the harness for Double Up, a 20-hole pinball playfield. So, lessons learned thus far. For the first playfield that I did, which was the 25-hole playfield, I was still laboring under the delusion that I'd be able to simply plug in these additional playfields, wire up a few extra switches, and be done with it. That's far from the truth. In fact, it was far simpler for me to actually completely build a new wiring harness for each of these playfields than it was to reuse what was existing. So, I ended up taking off the wiring for each of those games and then making my own harness, as I mentioned. That is a challenging and interesting art form, and not something that I had done previously, so this was kind of a learning experience. But it's been pretty fun, I'd say. It's very time-consuming, but it's pretty fun. One of the things is that my standard bingo playfield takes up 3 Jones plugs. Therefore, every additional playfield that I wire up requires at least 3 Jones plugs. They can use more or less positions on the individual plugs, but the order in which they're plugged in has to remain the same. So, that's a bit of a challenge, because I need to make sure that I'm not plugging things in incorrectly. And the way they did it in the olden days is that they would, when lacing their harness, they would make a big X around the area where the plug needed to come up with all the wires inside of it, or they would wrap it 3 or 4 times, or they would use this tar tape. And the tar tape is kind of like electrical tape, but very stiff, and it helps shape an odd section like that, where you have 24, 48 wires suddenly branching off from the trunk of this bundle. To complicate, that procedure and the fact that I do not have access to tar tape, the other issue is that I'm using plastic-coated wires, which are far flimsier than the cloth-covered wires that were used originally. That has made me question my decision to make harnesses several times. I've also thought about just repurposing the cloth wire that I have, because of course I've saved all the scrap, and just making my harness out of cloth. But at the end of the day, I keep coming down to the fact that it's going to be simpler for me, knowing the condition of the wire directly from the spool onto the playfield, to just wire it myself. So that's what I've been doing. The other lesson that I've learned is that you should start from the plug and work your way back to the playfield switch. The first playfield that I wired was the Shoot-A-Line, building my own harness, and I wired from the switch to the plug. Well, the problem there is that your measurements become inaccurate because you have to route around, whatever, or you have to go through a playfield staple over here, and you had anticipated going over there. So, for a variety of reasons like that, which only become apparent as you start to wire in the plug and realize that suddenly it's 2 inches shorter than you expected it to be, start from the plug and work your way back. I had mentioned previously that my soldering iron, I think I mentioned this on the podcast, but I had a soldering gun which failed when I was building my initial harness inside the head a long time ago. I had an iron fail the other day when I was desoldering one of the playfields. I think it was the shoot-a-line playfield. And the iron fell apart again. Burning hot, fell on the floor. Not on me, thankfully. And I replaced that with a cheapo temperature-controlled soldering iron. And that's been working very well. So, I've been just kind of tearing through it and seeing what all I can wire up. Now, I'm running low on plugs, and I've been reaching out for some specific sizes to a few people, so I'm just waiting on some of those, but I'm almost at the end of what I can actually physically accomplish because I won't have any connectors. So, let's talk about some exciting things. The first is I took the shoot-a-line playfield, and it was the first playfield that I dropped into the game after reassembling it, after painting it. And fired up the computer for the first time since reassembling everything, and it worked no problem. Everything's good. And then I went to test the harness. So one of the things, of course I did continuity tests on everything before dropping the playfield in, but you don't really know what's going to happen until you actually start pressing switches. So I went in and tested every switch on the playfield, and there are more on shoot-a-line than on most other bingo pinball playfields. And everything worked flawlessly, 100%, which is incredible. I'm shocked that happened. So, when I say everything worked, I mean all the switches switched appropriately. But one of them is dirty, and I've got to lift the playfield and clean one of them, and then everything will be good. It is sensing, but it's sensing multiple times in a second, so my logic isn't firing the way it's supposed to. So, that's what's going on. I mean, just a wiring fool over here. I've had my daughters help me with the wiring, and that's been going well. I wired up the drawer, I think I mentioned that, and built a harness between the inside of the drawer and the head. I ended up not implementing the third jack that I was talking about doing in the cabinet. I just felt like if I have enough wire, why be wasteful? Because it wouldn't serve very much purpose except to get tarnished and then create a problem later on down the road. So I just built the harness and put that in the head. I have not wired up the drawer switches in the head yet because I don't have the drawers fully assembled, and if I were to drop the buttons in, it would short the switches, and everything should be fine, but I don't want to mess around with that unless I have to. That said, everything's coming along very well. There's just nothing exciting where I can say, I've got another 400 games done. I still have about the same outstanding list. I think I mentioned, but I might not have. I tell you, this 2-week schedule going from every night to 2 weeks, it still messes me up because I don't remember exactly what I've talked about last time, but I did complete the roulette games code. That's ABC and Bolero. Those are both made by United. They use lighted scoring, and they have a unique playfield, which I haven't been able to locate yet. But it's essentially a roulette tub, and you fire the ball, it rotates around and lands in one of the holes arranged in a circle, and it's 25 holes. but they're arranged in the circular pattern instead of in the standard descending pyramid bingo pinball playfield format. So what makes these playfields unique and actually fairly interesting is that there's a pop bumper that's mounted in the center, and if your ball happens to slow down and roll across the center, the pop will fling it into one of the holes or around the edge, and then you can nudge it around and get it where you need it to go. These games look really challenging to me from a player's perspective because it looks like control is an issue. You've got to really use physics in a different way than you do typically on a bingo pinball playfield. So I'm looking forward to digging into that. I've got the code written. I've got my pops coded in, and I'm looking forward to actually actuating one of those and seeing how it plays. So that's one of the playfields that I still need. I still have to build up Galaxy. I've got a beautiful new old stock one. I've got the top side populated, but the bottom is unpopulated. I also have a Mystic Gate, which is top side mostly populated. I have some questions about how some of the units actually fit together because they're a little unique and appear to be pressure fit instead of set screw or E-clip or anything of that nature. If anybody has a Mystic Gate, I'd love to talk to you and get a photo or two, especially the underside of the playfield. So if you do, please contact me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com. So those are two of the unique playfields and the roulette playfield that I already mentioned. So that's three, which still need to be built. And then I need a Bally Tahiti playfield. This uses a ball return mechanism, which is unique to Tahiti and Galaxy. And Galaxy, I mentioned, is not bottom side populated. It doesn't have the unique unit, which moves the shutter back and forth to allow for half of the balls to return. I don't even know what one of these looks like, although I know it's motorized. On Palm Springs and Surf Club, it is not motorized. Instead, it's coil driven. So you hold in these big beefy coils underneath the playfield, and while the shutter motor turns, it will pull it over to one side or the other, releasing one half of the balls, either the odd or the evens. And it's constructed in such a way that it can do that. It's actually very clever and pretty unique, and I'm excited to get those games playing because I've had a lot of fun playing both Palm Springs and Surf Club in the past, and I'd like to play them in the present. So I'm hopeful that I'll have, by York or thereabouts, I'll have pretty much all the games coded that I can use these playfields for. That includes the largest amount that I have left to code, which are the 20-hole games. That includes games like Double Up, Hawaii, London, Venice, Orient, Bahama Beach, Zodiac, and quite a few more. So there's about 16 of them. And that also includes the wheel games, Big Wheel and Magic Ring. That said, I have some tweaks to make. I've mentioned this before. In some of the older games, I need to go back through and verify some of my portioning because some new details have come to light or my understanding has improved. And especially in the older games, I think I have a better handle on it now. So that's pretty much what I'm going to be doing in the run-up to York, is just working on playfields and working on code. But I also have a real cosmetic treat that I'm working on. It's still in the nascent stages in my brain. And I've probably mentioned something about it in the past, and we'll see what I can do to make that a reality before York, but probably not. As it stands, the game is pretty. I love still just going down to look at it. And I'm excited to get this in the hands of players and see what their reaction is. Hopefully pretty positive. Allentown is this weekend. Everybody going, I hope you have a great time. That's a big show on the East Coast. And there's typically quite a bit of EM activity. It's less laid back, than New York, but it's a good show from what I've seen. I've only been to one, but I would love to make the trip again. Hopefully work schedules and the like work out for next year. I know I say that every year, but one day. In other news, the EM World Championships, there's a tournament that's being held at the VFW, which is Clay Harrell's operation up there in Michigan, are also happening this weekend. So hope everybody who's going to that has a good time and gets to play some games. I read on Facebook that Duncan Brown's prototype Williams game, one of the lost designs of Harry Williams, is going to be there and playable this weekend. So definitely have a good time with that, and I hope to hear some about that in the future. Other big news, Ryan Clater, artist extraordinaire, has completed 3 new plastic sets, reproductions for 1950s Gottlieb games. The latest are Joker, Coronation, and Shindig, and these are available today from Pinball Resource. So give them a call if you need a set, and they're in limited quantities, so get them if you need them. His work, as always, is outstanding, and they really are quite the difference from most 50s wood rail plastics. Many are shriveled up and brown. For today's featured game, I wanted to talk about the PEO Manufacturing Corporation All-American Football, which was manufactured in September of 1935. This is a very interesting game for the time, and I'm not a sports person or a football person, but I find this game quite fascinating. So, here's the basic premise. You cannot lose a ball. There is no dead ball area at the bottom of the playfield. So, normally, on a game from even the 30s, you wend your way down the playfield, and if you make it all the way down without hitting anything, you don't score. There's no secret to it. You just don't get it. But this game actually prevents you from having a dead ball at all by the use of 3 different playfield features. There is a central hole at the bottom center of the playfield, and it's marked touchdown. The ball actually falls back through that hole and is returned to you, and more on that in a moment. And on the left and right side, there are kickbacks. The kickbacks fire up about 3/4 of the way up the playfield, and they dodge a couple of playfield features, which I'll get into in just a moment. And most of your scoring holes are situated in about the middle of the playfield. So the game really gives you a lot of chances to score, and in fact requires you to score before you can lift the next ball. So let's talk about those playfield features I've skipped over. Up at the top of the playfield, there is a set of 3 different holes. On the left-hand side, there's a hole that's marked 25 yards. In the middle, there's a hole that's 50 yards, and on the right-hand side, there's a hole that's marked 35 yards. And essentially, what you're trying to do is score touchdowns, and I touched on that down at the bottom of the playfield. But these holes up at the top of the playfield also return the ball to you. And for each ball that is levered down to shoot again, it increments your score towards a touchdown from those upper holes. So 2 balls in the 50-yard hole give you a touchdown, 3 in the 35-yard hole gives you a touchdown, and 4 in the 25-yard hole gives you a touchdown. That's pretty interesting, and I would be very interested to know how it counts those. I'm assuming that it's some hybrid of electric and electromechanical, rather than purely mechanical, but I could be wrong. That's why I'd like to see. What makes this very interesting, aside from that unique scoring, is how the game keeps track of it. This is a game with an automatic totalizer, but only for the touchdowns. It's not mechanical per se, but it's electromechanical. And the way it works, there's backglass animation. This is one of the long, skinny backglasses from that period in the 30s where you have countertop games and smaller games where the backglass size hadn't been standardized. So you wind up with these displays in the backboard which are fairly small and contain only the information needed. They act less as advertisements for the game and more as an extension of the game itself. So, in this game, you've got All-American Football written across the glass and a person playing football and about to throw a football across the back glass. But all the way across the back glass, you have this set of marbles, and these marbles will kick over and around, similar to games like Gottlieb Soccer or Mibs or Bowling Queen, any of those games that uses the balls in the back glass to help denote bonus or score. And that's exactly what they do in this game. For each touchdown that you score, including those ones which are totalized from the holes at the top of the playfield, a ball will be kicked around for each touchdown and increment your score. So for the first 3 balls, you earn 500 points. The next 3 balls earn 1,000 points. The following 3 earn 1,500 points. And if you get 10 touchdowns, that's 2,000 points. And you add all those up, and that's your score, including the scores which are labeled on the playfield. So you can have a really high-scoring game by really racking up those touchdowns. So it's in your interest to do so. Another interesting feature about this is if you tilt the game, then the little peg which holds those marbles in place will release, and your totalized score for the touchdowns goes away. All the balls are returned back to the trough that there is for this touchdown feature, which I find also fascinating for 1935. Quite a few unique features for such an early game. I will say that the wood cabinet is also beautiful. I'm assuming that this is run from a dry cell battery. Being 35, there are no lamps on the playfield. I don't know if there is a single lamp in the back glass or not. I would assume no. But there are a few coils. You have the kickers on the left and right, and you have the kicker in the back box, which is kicking those marbles up and around. You also have the kicker for the peg, which has to fire out or pull in, depending on if you're tilted or not. So this is an electromechanical game, but I don't know if there are any mechanical components, purely mechanical, wrapped up in there. As I said, I would be interested to know. So that's really the game. I've got to say I'm very impressed, and if I was more of a football person or a sports person, I would be even more impressed, I'm sure. But as it stands, it's a football game that I'd be interested in playing, and that says an awful lot. Well, thanks very much for listening. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, or you can call me on the Bingos line. That's 724-BINGOS1, 724-246-4671. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter, at Bingo Podcast. You can follow me on Instagram, also at Bingo Podcast, or you can listen to us on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.